Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. My name is Paul Harris and I am president of the City Club's Board of Directors. I am very privileged to introduce today's speaker, Kevin J. Kelley, president of Cleveland City Council. He's making a return appearance. During his appearance last July 9 here, we noted that Cleveland had an ascendant direction. And in subsequent days and months, LeBron James announced his return to Cleveland. By the way, what an inspirational effort from our home team. And the RNC officially announced that Cleveland would be the host city for the 2016 Republican National Convention, and the city hosted an extraordinarily successful 2014 Gay Games. While we continue to celebrate those and other successes, our community has, of course, also experienced profound challenges that have underscored the importance of strong and visible community leadership. And city councilors responded under Mr. Kelley's leadership, including through the organization of listening tours in which council members participated in community meetings throughout the city's neighborhoods. Today, Mr. Kelley will present an ambitious agenda for Cleveland's future, and one that resonates strongly with the City Club's enduring tradition as a citadel of free speech and civic engagement. Here, a brief historical note is in order. One of our city's early 20th century leaders, Newton D. Baker, mayor and before that city solicitor, coined the term civitism. Mr. Baker's legacy includes a prominent law firm that bears his name, and here at the City Club, we honor him as one of our founding fathers. On October 10, 1907, Mr. Baker, then a city solicitor, wrote in the Cleveland Plain Dealer that, quote, "The greatness of a city does not consist in its buildings, nor in its institutions or its benevolences, but rather in the intensity and intelligences with which its citizens love the city as their home," end quote. That was his articulation of civitism, and today Mr. Kelley will speak to us about what the term means in 2015. Those of you who joined us last year will remember some of the council president's impressive biography, his service in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, his MSW in addition to his JD, his representation of the 13th Ward since 2005, and his rise through various leadership posts. I understand that one of our fine City Club staff also recently learned from one of your colleagues in council that you're a strong long-distance runner and that you generally finish ahead of the pack. So you've demonstrated leadership in multiple respects. Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please join me in welcoming Kevin J. Kelley, President of Cleveland City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, for that kind introduction. When I last saw you, you were introducing the President of the United States, so I'm glad that was able to serve as a warm-up for today. And I want to thank Dan Moulthrop for inviting me back to speak at the City Club this year. I want to also thank Mayor Jackson, his administration, City Council members with whom I have the privilege of serving, and I want to thank all of you who are here in attendance today to participate in a discussion about the future of our great city. I, of course, want to especially thank my wife, Elizabeth, and my children for being here today, however reluctantly. My mother, Margot, is joining us as well, so keep in mind during questions and answers that my wife and my mother are here, so don't say anything bad about me. It is a true honor to be speaking at the City Club of Cleveland. I'm on the same stage as many esteemed historic, national, and local leaders, and it really is a true honor to be here. And as such, you might think that I would be nervous being up here, but I'm really not, because I had a feeling that today people would be distracted to be watching that game last night, and I think we're all distracted and we're asking ourselves the exact same question, which is, why can't the Indians play that good every night? But it has been a year since I stood on the stage and discussed the progress made and the challenges that remain with our city. When I last stood on the stage, Cleveland had just been awarded the Republican National Convention, and we were within days of LeBron's decision, Part 2. And as I stand here today, I'm every bit as optimistic about the future of our city, but I'm far more cognizant of the challenges that we face. I've been president of Cleveland City Council for over a year now, and I'm very proud to be a member of this body. Cleveland City Council is an extremely talented, thoughtful, and progressive group of legislators. For example, on our leadership team, our majority leader, Phyllis Cleveland, is a lawyer, a former assistant prosecutor, and a former magistrate. She's sometimes quiet, but if you underestimate her intellect or political skill, you do so at your own peril. Council Majority Whip Terrell Pruitt is a Major United States Army National Guard. He's on tours in Afghanistan and hurricane relief in Louisiana. Collectively, Council has 6 lawyers, 4 former prosecutors, 15 have bachelor's degree, and 2 hold master's degrees. So let me begin by giving a brief summary of what this council has been up to over the past year and what we've accomplished. Because a great international city has to be open and welcoming to all, Cleveland City Council just recently passed an ordinance to provide benefits to same-sex domestic partners. This council, through the leadership of Councilman Simperman, has made the plight of refugees a priority and positioned the city of Cleveland as a destination city. And council has begun the process to address the needs of those with limited English proficiency to make City Hall and city services accessible to all of our citizens. We're making sure that our signs, websites, telephone prompts, and forms can be understood by all residents in our community. A great city needs solid bones, and all of us here today are acutely aware of the infrastructure challenges that we face. We all drive the same streets, and we all see the same problems. And Council has prioritized the improvement and upgrading of our city's infrastructure. Just recently, we approved a $100 million bond issue for citywide improvements that will include road and bridge improvements, purchase of new service vehicles such as police cars and snowplows. This will also allow us to make capital improvements in our city-owned buildings such as rec centers and police stations. Council has also worked to develop a systematic plan to resurface every street in the city of Cleveland and more than doubled our annual capital investment in our streets. One of the most significant infrastructure projects that has been talked about for years is finally under construction, and that is the Opportunity Corridor. But not only has the city and the council been a partner with ODOT in this over $300 million project, but the project has been leveraged as a workforce development initiative as well. And Cleveland residents, suppliers, vendors, and small businesses will participate in and benefit from this project. Of course, Council has continued its efforts to strengthen our neighborhoods, eliminate blight, and encourage investment in development. Council funded research that demonstrated the effect that demolition and blight removal have on property values and the foreclosure rate. This study has been the basis of our tireless efforts to secure additional funding for demolition and blight removal. Over the past years on the neighborhood level, we have seen the renewal of special improvement districts in the downtown neighborhood and the Detroit Shoreway neighborhood. We saw the expansion of the Waterloo Arts Community Entertainment District, and we saw continued efforts to revive the Variety Theater. None of this happens without the determination of council and the commitment of individual council members. But a great city must also address the social and quality of life issues that we face as a community. Council has continued to battle some of our most pressing social issues. Through advocacy and partnership with our Department of Public Safety, we're able to expand services to victims of domestic violence citywide. We've provided additional funding for prenatal services to at-risk expectant mothers and new mothers. And Council has also been on the forefront of the community conversation in dealing with the unrest that has resulted, after the Department of Justice findings were released, the deaths of Tamir Rice and Tanisha Anderson, and the recent decision in the Michael Brillo case. And I will come back to that later. These are just a few of the accomplishments the Council has made over the past year. But they were not accomplished by Council alone. All of the accomplishments I listed were completed as a result of the partnership between the Council and the Mayor. And this partnership is strong. And it is only through this partnership that the city that is constantly challenged for resources can produce results for you. And your Cleveland City Council is committed to partnership, to working together, and to building a strong, safe, and vibrant Cleveland. A Cleveland where families see a future, a Cleveland where business sees as a wise investment, and a Cleveland that we can all see what Mayor Newton D. Baker called civitism. And I mentioned this word civitism when I spoke here last year, and I've used it a couple times since. It's not a word that's found in the dictionary, and it's not a word that's used much at all. But I don't think that this word and its meaning should be lost to history. Civitism is a term coined by Mayor Newton D. Baker, our 37th mayor, and civitism is, on a local level, what patriotism is on a national level. It stands for the notion that the greatness of our city does not depend on our buildings, whether public or private, but rather on the intensity with which we love Cleveland as our home. The theory goes on that this pervasive love of Cleveland will inevitably produce beautiful public spaces, clean and maintained streets, honest government, and commitment to justice. That is a nice idea, right? So what does it have to do with governing the city of Cleveland? Well, everything. In any job or profession, there has to be underlying principles or values or guidelines that drive us and guide us. And civitism, a love of place, should be the governing principle of how we govern the city of Cleveland. And to really get a sense of how this concept fits into governing the city, let's just start with a basic question. What is the role of local government? When I first asked myself this question, I came up with what I believe to be 3 core functions that, if perfected, maybe it's all we would need to do. First, provide for the public safety. Provide top-notch police service, fire service, and emergency medical care. Next, provide exemplary traditional municipal services, such as snow removal, trash collection, and street sweeping. And third, maintain our public infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, and our municipally owned assets. I consider that if we do these 3 things very well, maybe we wouldn't have to have tax abatement. Maybe we wouldn't need to provide tax increment financing or other incentives to encourage people and businesses to invest in the city of Cleveland. If we did these 3 things extremely well, maybe we wouldn't have to do much else. And this sounded good to me for about 30 seconds. And then I had to return to reality, because municipal government is so much more than its core functions. Local government is the problem solver of last resort. For example, your city government is not a landscaping company, we're not property managers, and we're not a bank. But we've essentially had to become these things because of a foreclosure crisis and a real estate crash that were not of our making. But do we ignore the problem? Did we say that's not our job? Of course not. We cut the lawns, we manage the properties, we demolish properties that other people have walked away from, and we work to put properties into responsible hands. Why? We do that because the quality of life of the neighbor next door, everybody on that street, and the entire community suffers if this is neglected. And what do people do when there's an issue, if there's paint peeling or grass is long? You call the city. Congress isn't going to manage the property. The state of Ohio isn't going to come out and help you out. You call the city because local government responds. And it's not just housing issues. This is the case for lead poisoning, infant mortality, opiate addiction, education, poverty, and many other social issues that we did not create, but we are called upon to solve. And of course we respond, because that is what local government does. So the challenge and the complexity of local government is this. We must continue to improve public safety. We have to always strive towards exemplary municipal services, and we have to constantly invest in our infrastructure. But we must also dedicate our resources, our time, our talent, and our energy to solving those quality of life and social issues that impact the collective soul of our city. Local government requires us to take a broad, comprehensive view of our city. And in considering providing for the needs of the city, I look at our buildings, at our roads, and our infrastructure kind of as the bones of our city or the body of the city. And I look to our response to quality of life and social issues as the soul of our city. And how this ties back to the idea of civitism is this. Our community has made a commitment to building beautiful buildings, both public and private, and there's a tremendous amount of investment going towards building, renovating, and repurposing our public and private buildings. And this is good. We should continue to do this. You just have to look around. If you look to the Convention Center Hotel, the 54-story Nucleus project, the Cleveland Lakefront development, just to name a few. Your city will continue to partner with developers, the county, and other entities such as the Cleveland Metro Parks to keep the development momentum going. But remember, the concept of civicism tells us that the greatness of the city doesn't depend only on its buildings, but rather on the intensity with which we love the city of Cleveland. So if we love this city, it has to be shown in the respect, concern, and care that we show towards one another as a community. This defines who we are. This is the soul of the city. And by care and concern, I don't mean saying hello to somebody you see on Euclid Avenue. I mean showing care and concern by getting personally involved with our city's challenges, contributing your time, your energy, and your money to the issues that face us. There is no shortage in opportunity to be part of the progress of your city. So, in developing a policy agenda, we sought to keep strong the bones of the city, but also to focus our resources on the soul of the city. Our agenda going forward covers many but not all topics. Some of the top policy items include reducing infant mortality, lead poisoning, violence, and neighborhood blight. And while I separated these issues by commas in the word "and," they are not separate issues. They are very much interrelated. Let's start with the tragedy of infant mortality. To me, this is a stop what you're doing and clear your desk and focus moment. While I wish I could say that more progress has been made to date, I can assure you that this issue will receive the attention and urgency that it requires from this point forward. So I would ask you to pay attention for just a second and put your phones down. If you take nothing else from today, take this. Ohio ranks 46 out of 50th in our rate of infant mortality in this nation. Cuyahoga ranks amongst the worst of the 88 counties. And in Cleveland, 78% of the deaths were African Americans. Simply put, we are doing worse than many developing nations. This is something that should shock us. And I'm glad that this issue is finally making the talking points list for many politicians. But let me be clear, this issue is not going to be the cause célèbre or the beer of the month for Cleveland City Council. This is going to be a focused, intense, and ongoing effort to solve the problem. The good news is this. We know what works. We don't know how to eliminate the issue just yet, but we have good evidence-based practice to suggest which interventions work. So it really is a matter of defining best practices, coordinating efforts, and most importantly, committing the necessary resources to solve the problem. We need the entire community to be involved. Everyone can and should help on this issue. I must admit that I was not locked in on this issue soon enough. But now I better understand the issue, now I know the facts surrounding it, and now I am. So now I know, and now you know, and now we must act. And this is just one of the pressing social issues that your council will be working on in the year and years ahead. We'll also continue the fight against lead poisoning, opiate addiction, and a host of health issues facing Cleveland. Our agenda also focuses on neighborhood development and blight removal. Despite the prosperity seen in some neighborhoods, other neighborhoods still struggle with blight and lack of opportunity. Council recently partnered with the Thriving Communities Institute to survey every property in the city of Cleveland, and that is currently going on. Going forward, we will use this information to allocate resources so that we can have the most impact on those neighborhoods and those streets that are impacted the most. We'll focus on voluntary compliance, code enforcement, demolition, renovation, and reuse. And I'm confident that Councilman Brancatelli can guide this council in the best practices and policy in using our scarce housing resources. Your council will also work closely with Mayor Jackson in the $29 million neighborhood investment grants, $29 million neighborhood investment grants. This is a program that the mayor conceived that invests public funds in neighborhoods where the private sector has not invested, with the hope being that the private sector will see that development is possible, that economic opportunity does happen in these neighborhoods, and will follow. And why is investment so challenging in some of our neighborhoods? One likely reason is that crime and violence are all too prevalent in some of our neighborhoods. And the issue of crime and violence, there are no easy answers. But we have to continue fighting until this is under control. Recently, we approved a series of ordinances designed to strengthen gun safety laws. This included safe storage, stronger child access laws, and mandatory sentences for gun offenders. And while nothing that we did interfered with the right to purchase or own a firearm, that didn't stop the gun lobby from suing us the next day. Really, it was the next day. And if we're successful in court, I'm sure our friends in Columbus will try to preempt or otherwise undo our gun laws. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to legislate sensible gun laws for a city in the state of Ohio. I remember when I first heard guns in bars, and I thought it was a joke. And it was almost surreal that a few months later, it was an actual gubernatorial issue of whether they support guns in bars. Let me get this straight. The Browns game's on, you get a few Pittsburgh fans that filter in, as they always do, and then you add guns. I don't get it. I mean, I'm waiting for somebody in Columbus to come up with like guns in daycare or guns in maternity wards. And I'm kind of joking, but not really. Currently, the House is considering House Bill 48, which allows guns in daycare facilities, colleges, churches, aircraft, airports, police stations, and school safety zones. You know, I couldn't make this stuff up. In addition to the guns, we approved legislation that saw an increase of 10 additional police officers in 2015, with another 25 coming in 2016. But this alone will not be enough. To really fight crime in our neighborhoods, we need not just law enforcement, but we need community leaders, we need residents, and we need parents, all to be involved in the fight against violence. Of course, as I am discussing our public safety agenda, much of Council's public safety agenda will be devoted towards putting in place those items contained in the recent consent decree agreed to by the City of Cleveland and the Department of Justice. And we can't talk about the future of the City of Cleveland without addressing the community unrest that has occurred as a result of the Department of Justice findings, the Tamir Rice and Tanisha Anderson deaths, and the recent decision in the Michael Brillo trial. These are events that have tested and will continue to test the soul of this city. As a very initial matter, for what it's worth, your city, your mayor, your council care very deeply about this. Immediately following the release of the Department of Justice findings, Councilman Zone brought the U.S. Attorney in to address the council and to go through the findings so that we could begin to best understand this issue. Councilman Zone then planned a series of community meetings we called listening tours, where we went into the community for the sole purpose of listening to citizens. The listening tours provided a safe space for people to talk and provide information. And this information, the listening tour that was gathered at the listening tours, was used as a basis for some of the items in the consent decree, and it led to the introduction of a bias-free policing ordinance. Understandably, there were protests following these events. And that people felt concern and outrage is understandable. And I believe that the mayor and the chief of police were wise and prudent in how they handled it by allowing people to express their point of view so long as it was done in a peaceful manner. So while there were some traffic interruptions, for the most part what we saw were orderly protests and a few arrests. When the Michael Brillo verdict was announced, this was one of the greatest challenges to this community. But unlike other communities across the nation, as a decision drew near, the city, through the mayor and the chief of police, worked with the state, worked with the county, contacted the police divisions of neighboring communities, but also engaged the Cleveland Municipal School District, faith-based communities, our friends in the union movement, everybody came together to ensure that the response was nonviolent and non-destructive. But we are not done. We have much more to go. The Tamir Rice and Tanisha Anderson cases are not concluded. And again, it is right to ask questions. It is right to demand answers. The Tamir Rice case is complex, and there are no clear or easy answers. And in talking to my daughters about the complexity of this case, she cut to the chase and gave me some perspective. In discussing this, I talked about what the information might have come from dispatch, the position of the car, training issues. And my daughter kind of cut me off and said, he's 12 and he's dead. And this sort of summed up quite well the mood of she summed it up quite well and seemed to reflect the mood of the public. Regardless of the outcome of the legal case or any training or process that will come of this, nothing changes that simple truth. How this community continues to respond to this will be another defining moment in our city's history. The events of the recent past have been challenging, but they also offer an opportunity to move this city forward. Now that the consent decree has been accepted, we will live and breathe this document and work to restore confidence in the division of police for all of our communities. I am confident that the city of Cleveland will be seen as a national model in police-community relations. So as I conclude, let me stress that in addition to what I talked about today, there are many other challenges that will be taken up during this term. So if the City Club is gracious enough to invite me back again next year, I can tell you what you should expect to be accomplished. You should expect a beautifully renewed public square, noticeable improvements in our city streets, transformation of the West Shoreway, a complete survey of the condition of every property in the city of Cleveland, a coordinated plan to reduce infant mortality, a completed convention center hotel, and we will all be celebrating the success of the Republican National Convention. A last word on civitism. When Baker coined this term, it was during what is referred to as Cleveland's progressive era and considered by many historians as Cleveland's best years. I see a lot of similarities between then and now. Early 20th century saw the construction of many iconic buildings. Just a few that come to mind, well, they come to mind because they're on my paper. The old courthouse, City Hall, and the Cleveland Museum of Art. Now in the 21st century, we've seen our own construction and renovation of many of these same iconic buildings, as well as construction of new ones. The Convention Center, which I mentioned earlier, the Convention Center Hotel, the renovated Art Museum, and the list goes on. So I think if you look at both eras, both were committed to building iconic buildings. And both eras were also committed to public spaces. If the early 20th century saw the founding of the metro parks, they never envisioned the partnership with the city of Cleveland that would result in the amazing stewardship and development of our lakefront parks. They may have created the Burnham Plan, but thanks to the Group Plan Commission, we are bringing that vision to reality. So if I compare the two eras, I think that we match an investment we match the investment in iconic buildings and public spaces. But we need to exceed this era in the level of civic engagement. During this era, the city leaders were free to talk about civil society, civic engagement, all those high-minded terms that we don't hear as much anymore. But this era had its own problems, just as we do today. They faced child labor, tenement conditions, and a whole host of challenges that were unique to that era. But they also faced some of the problems that we still deal with today. In 1915, after the creation of the Cleveland Foundation, it set out to uncover the causes of poverty and crime and point out the cure. Well, we're still dealing with poverty and we're still dealing with crime, and it's been 100 years. So just as we, in this era, took the idea of the metro parks and expanded it and made it better, and just as we took the Burnham Plan and we completed it, let's commit to accepting this challenge and recommit to those goals. So today, if we can ensure that our commitment to if we can ensure that our commitment to iconic buildings and public spaces also results in meaningful opportunities for all residents of the city of Cleveland, if we can commit that no person is left out of Cleveland's recovery, then I believe that our best era and our best years are not centered around 1912. Our best times are now, and our best years are yet to come. Thank you.
Today we are listening to a special Wednesday forum featuring Cleveland City Council President Kevin J. Kelley. We're going to move from a listening to an active participation mode here in a minute with our traditional City Club question and answer period. We encourage you to start formulating your questions now, and please try to keep them brief and to the point. We've got a packed room, and I know there are a lot of questions brewing up, so we want to get as many in as possible. Be sure to tune into our Friday forums via our primary media partner, 90.3 WCPN, WVIZ PBS, 104.9 WCLV Idea Stream, or one of the many radio stations across the country and our region that carry City Club programs. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC, and our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. Please be sure to join us this Friday, June 19, as we welcome Kristen Olson, author of The Soil Will Save Us, for a conversation on why she believes better agriculture is our best hope for a stable climate. For more information about our upcoming and past forums, please visit us online at cityclub.org. Today's forum is the annual Peter de Leon Endowed Forum on Local Politics, made possible by a generous gift from Mr. de Leon. We thank you for your support. Our sponsor for today's forum is the Northeast Ohio Media Group, the City Club sponsor politics and policy program, and we also thank you for your support. Our community partner for today's program, we got lots of supporters in multiple ways here, is the Legal Aid Society, and we thank you for your support. And additionally, we welcome guests at tables hosted by numerous organizations across our region. Please refer to the printed program for a complete listing of all of our supporters today. And again, we thank you all very much for your support. Now, as promised, it's time to return to Council President Kelley for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone here today, including guests. And we've got two people holding microphones, City Club intern Wesley Allen and Associate Director of Development Mike Cremaldi. First question, please.
Kevin, during your introduction, the profound challenges we face as a community were mentioned. Right now in the State House, House Bill 180 and Senate Bill 152 seek to prohibit residency requirements on city or statewide construction projects, state-funded construction projects. Can you talk about the impact of that for the city of Cleveland?
Yes, I absolutely can. Thank you. Currently in Columbus, there is an effort to not allow the city of Cleveland to have local hiring preferences. And I got to say, I'm not just against that, I'm offended by it. It's yet another opportunity for Columbus to believe that they can govern the city of Cleveland better than we can. Just recently, we celebrated the fact that the city of Cleveland reached an agreement with the Cleveland Building and Construction Trades Council and the Cleveland Municipal School District to have an enterprise, the Max Hayes program, so that we can get our students into the high-paid trades. Now, this isn't something we just came up with. The Greater Cleveland Partnership was involved in this. The business community's into it. And shockingly, just to further answer your question, I mentioned the Opportunity Corridor. When Governor Kasich was in town, he led the charge. He was on Front Street in terms of this needs to be something that's going to be a local project. We have to have local participation in this. Local businesses, local suppliers. Cleveland has to benefit from this. This is not just a roadway project. And, we formed the, Councilman Cleveland was essential in this. We formed the Opportunity Corridor Steering Committee. They've worked with the Greater Cleveland Partnerships Diversity Inclusion Committee. So here, we've got the business community, we've got the labor community, we've got the city, we've got the schools. Everybody working together. But Columbus thinks that they can do this better. It's shocking to me. I fully expect Governor Kasich to veto this if it does come to his desk, but I would encourage everybody in this room to contact your local state representation because this is just yet another ridiculous attempt by our state government to intrude on our home rule powers. But this one is particularly obnoxious because it goes right after something that we as a community have worked so hard to get to. It goes to employing people so that people can be in trades and support their families and have jobs. Thanks for the question, but I have to stop now or else I never will.
I applaud your efforts to make Cleveland a better place for refugees to live. Can you talk for a second about what you also plan to do to make Cleveland more attractive for immigrants, the foreign-born as a whole, who are debating the idea of settling here?
Certainly. That idea, the notion that Cleveland is an open and welcoming city, is something that we have embraced at all levels, of the mayor, the council, everybody. We know this. We are an active member of Global Cleveland. We have representation on their board, and we look at how do we attract people to the city of Cleveland every day. This is something that we believe that, in addition to being the right thing to do for the immigrants or the refugees or whomever, it is something that we can use to rebuild our neighborhoods and our economy. So we are, I hate to use this term, but we're all in on that issue.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit about what Cleveland is doing to improve its public transportation systems?
I'm not the best person to answer that, I'm sorry. I could, but it wouldn't be a good answer. Cleveland City Council is a separate municipal corporation, or the City of Cleveland, from the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. I know that there's a lot of people in this room that know a whole lot more about it than I do, and I don't want to make a mistake.
Mr. Council President, thank you so much for joining us today. You, early on in your speech, you talked about the bias-free policing legislation recently passed by City Council. The head of the Patrolmen's Association, Steve Loomis, has said that there is no bias on the police force. So can you help us understand the gap between the legislation, the perception, and perhaps define reality as you see it?
Okay, thank you. The reality as I see it is that this ordinance, it's in the introduction phase. So it will have additional hearings, and we will go through that. But I would say that for anybody who is even lightly kind of kept up with the news, we didn't just make this stuff up. We've been working closely with the mayor's office, with the Department of Justice to the extent that it was appropriate. And I know that the sponsor, Councilman Zone, spent many hours on that and really went through the justification. We can't just do stuff if there's no justification. So I believe that all of the answers, anybody's concerns about it, will come out during the committee process. But I think that it was a kind of a responsible first step in letting people know that we've internalized this. We care. We're going to move forward. And I haven't spoken with Mr. Loomis. I don't know exactly what his objections are, but we're open to all opinions on this.
With the plan to completely resurface all the streets in Cleveland, it seems like that's an incredible opportunity to make our streets not only a great use for cars, but also for public transit, bikes, and pedestrians. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. We're a couple years ahead on that one. Council passed a complete and green streets ordinance, I believe it was in 2014, 2013. Has anybody got it? 12. Oh, man, I was asleep at the wheel. In 2012, we've had the complete and green streets ordinance, and that ordinance asked that we consider are permeable surfaces possible along the roadways? What about streetscaping? What about bike lanes? All those things that are going to make it so that a road is just not something for a car to drive down, but it's pedestrian friendly and it supports all the uses that a public right of way should. Thank you.
Hi, Councilman.
11.
Thanks for sharing insights on the $100 million legacy infrastructure bond. That's really important for us to understand. A third of Clevelanders in the city don't actually have access to high-speed internet, a 21st century infrastructure. Can you speak to your point of view on that and what, for example, you and your colleagues are working on in that area?
Yes, thank you. I think that our access to high-speed broadband is going to be very important for our economy going forward. I think it's something that the city of Cleveland needs to really embrace and move forward. And to that end, I think the first step is we really need to kind of exploit the fiber network that we do have and the partners such as One Community that are doing this. There is tremendous fiber infrastructure under, for example, Euclid Avenue. The Opportunity Corridor has a provision for fiber, and as you know, the West 25th Street project is completing the, whether gig service along the West 25th Street corridor is going to be a good economic development tool. I believe that it is. I believe that we can attract businesses and residents and people, and it can improve the quality of life by offering those amenities. Personally, I don't need a gig, but I know that there's businesses that do. But I think that if we could make it so that every business and resident had access to the level of service that they need, then I think that would go a long way towards moving our economy forward, attracting businesses, and really putting Cleveland on a different path. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good
I'm going
afternoon.
to ask you for a quick minute to take off your council hat and put on your father hat.
Okay, come on, girls.
I'm inspired by what your 12-year-old daughter has shared with you. When you put that hat on, is Cleveland safe?
Yes. No, yeah. It's a good question, but and I guess it's something that it's good to put that in the public forum. Yes, Cleveland is safe. There are issues. We understand that we have a problem with gun violence and some other issues that I discussed. But if you look at the Part 1 crimes and different crimes throughout basically, you can look from the 70s back, but look at just the recent history since 2006, what we've done, what the city of Cleveland, what the Department of Public Safety has done to reduce those numbers. In most instances, I would say you are in more risk driving your car home from this event than you would be walking somewhere near public square. The deployment plans, the use of technology, everything that we're doing, Cleveland is a safe city. We read about the horrific crimes, and we read about that, and that becomes our impression. But you asked me to put my fatherhood hat on. I let my children ride their bikes to their friend's house. I wish they did that more. Got that, girls? Ride more bikes. I let them freely walk around the neighborhood. I don't have any concerns. And I think that most neighborhoods are like that. And I appreciate the questions, but I want to clearly and unequivocally state that Cleveland is safe. Okay. Any easy ones? Okay.
How are you addressing council governance, or looking at council governance with some would say bloated number of council members for a city this size?
What community do you live in?
I live in Ohio City.
Oh, sorry, okay. Oh, okay. The reason I ask that is that there are many suburban communities that have, 6 council people and a mayor for a city of 24,000. We did address this issue years ago. We put the issue to the people of the city of Cleveland. And we put on the charter, it used to be, we had 33 council members for decades, and then it was reduced to 21 by our charter. We sought a charter amendment to which we suggested having one council person for every 25,000 residents. And it would be reset each year by the census. And that is what we did. That's why we were 21 when I first started, and then we went to 19, and now we're at 17. And it's all based on the census. And I think that is a good formula to have, first and foremost, because the people of the city of Cleveland voted on it. They spoke that that's what they wanted. And the job of council, we're serving, as the population diminishes, our numbers will go down according to census, but we've got the same number of streets, we've got the same number of houses to deal with. But I believe that issue has been conclusively spoken upon by the people of the city of Cleveland.
Good afternoon, Council President.
Good afternoon.
I was just wondering whether Council has any thoughts and plans on the recently passed legislation in Columbus regarding the open container zones.
Yes, but it is It is far from prime time for the city of Cleveland at this point. There haven't been applications. We haven't developed a process by which we will approve or deny those applications. We are very much aware of it. We are watching it very closely, but it has not reached a level where Cleveland is very involved in it at this point.
You touched on the amount of money the city is going to invest in infrastructure, and I was wondering if you could talk about not just the roads and things like that, but the underlying infrastructure and specifically lighting throughout the city.
Lighting?
Yes, lighting.
Oh, okay, thank you. With street light, let me just tell a little bit more on the infrastructure issue, because infrastructure is a lot more than roads, and it's more than that. Our division of water, we've made tremendous investments in the plant and capital over the decades, and I'll suggest that infrastructure is amongst the best in the world right now. Looking at water pollution control, we just recently passed a capital increase for Division of Water Pollution Control, which is, they are most people might not know, they're the organization where it goes from your house to the sewer. So we gave them more capital capacity to deal with water pollution control and the water that flows from your house. As far as the lighting goes, we've completed an LED pilot project. And we're looking at the issue of, what savings can be gained, what performance can be gained if we were to invest in LED lighting. And that is an ongoing process, and we are continuing to look at the issue of, how do we improve our city's network, our lighting infrastructure. Thank you.
Hello. You talked a lot about infant mortality. I was wondering if you could talk, I know the mayor and his administration and many city council members have been involved in Healthy Cleveland. So I was wondering if you could talk about your vision for that in the upcoming year.
Yes. Indeed, the Healthy Cleveland, Councilman Simperman originally brought this to me during our budget process last year, and I went to the mayor and we had an increase of $200,000, and we did that. Another year rolls by, and Councilman Simperman came with the same issue. We need more money for this issue. But this year when I went to talk to the mayor, we had a different conversation. This year the conversation was more, let's stop putting money at just a program, at any one program, and expecting a much different result. Let's take this money, let's take the city's added investment, and let's leverage other funds. Let's leverage other providers and other people that are doing this work. Because quite frankly, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good things for this issue in the community. There's people doing great things, but they're not necessarily coordinated, and I don't know that we're leveraging the strengths that we have in the community. So the way I see this moving forward is that we will continue to best coordinate services with those that are already providing the service. We've spent some time just recently really trying to figure out what is the number that we would have to get to solve the problem if we had all the money in the world. And I think that number is very important, because once we have the number, we can get there. It's just, at that point, it's just a matter of will. And I think we're very close to doing that. So basically, we're looking at coordinating resources, developing the best practices model, and finding the resources to stop the problem. As complicated as tragic as this problem is, it's surprising, it's refreshing, it's inspiring how much visiting and case management and outreach, some of the work that's going on can make such a huge difference. And that's been around for a long time. We didn't invent it. We can fix it. We just need the resources. We need to figure out what we need to do to get to the people that are affected. And I think that with, like I said, this is not a quick issue for us. This is something that we are going to spend a lot of time. A lot of issues are just, the answers are just so far out. You talk about opiate addiction. You talk about some of these things, like how do you get there? With infant mortality, I'm very confident that we can get to where we need to go. It's how do you leave this room and not think about the fact that the state of Ohio is a 46 out of 50 states of dealing with this problem. It's shocking, and it's something that I think that there is an answer. Probably more than you wanted, but okay. Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Given that East Cleveland mirrors a lot of neighborhoods already existing and the neighborhoods that are already a part of Cleveland. What is Cleveland promising East Cleveland so that they'll be on board, or that process, that annexation would take place? What things are we offering that we can't offer the communities and neighborhoods that are already part of Cleveland?
Thank you. Let me answer that question by just saying we're not offering anything at this point. At this point, this is an East Cleveland issue, and I have thoughts and opinions about this. But I'm trying to stand, just allowing East Cleveland. The first step in this is the people of East Cleveland need to collect the requisite number of petitions to give to their council to say that we want to explore a merger. Now, the law says annexation. I will always use the term merger or something else. No, nobody wants to think of their city as being annexed. But when that comes to me, because it comes to the council president, I'm not special. When it comes to me, I will accept it, and then the process will start. But right now, it's an East Cleveland issue, and I do not want to assume that I know what the people of East Cleveland want. I do not want to assume. I don't want to prescribe any course for them or any path. But if East Cleveland does reach the requisite number of signatures and does present a petition, then we will begin discussing. Questions about the Cavs, the Indians? What's that? Okay.
The state of Ohio has passed multi-billion-dollar tax cuts that mostly benefit the wealthiest Ohioans, and all of the three core functions, as well as a number of the other things you've mentioned, are being harmed by the state of Ohio's sort of failure to enable local governments to have the resources they need. Do you have any thoughts about the state budget?
I have lots of thoughts on the state budget. It's hard to not let that ruin your day when you hear about the repeated things that are happening. But I start with the fact that we had a terrible recession that we went through as a community, and I believe we responded quite well through the mayor's management of the budget, through the council. I think we got through that pretty well. And just a fun fact is we are at pre-recession levels in terms of our income tax receivables. We've done those things to encourage businesses to come back. We've done what we can to rebuild our economy. Our budget would be balanced plus some. We wouldn't have any. We always have a balanced budget because we're a city, but we wouldn't have any carryover if only the local government fund weren't decimated. We're more than $40 million down, and that is not easy money to replace. If the state of Ohio did not cut our local government fund, the commercial activity tax, the estate tax, or anything else that hurts the city of Cleveland, the city of Cleveland would be in a very good financial position. And what really bothers me is that, if you look at the state of Ohio, it's an income tax state. So they're not making their revenue. Their revenue is not coming from Licking County, or it's not coming from Marietta County. It's coming from the major urban centers. So essentially, they're taking our money, they're keeping more of our money, and they're redistributing it to themselves or some rural counties. And just if you're bored and you're looking for something to do or another reason to be mad at the state, look at what happened during the recession when they cut the local government fund. How many state departments were cut, and by how much? How many layoffs did the state have? I mean, it's tremendous. And I'll tell you just probably more information you wanted, but this is real. When those cuts happen, it's real. It's when I'm on my with my kids or hanging out or at the church or wherever, and I remember people coming up to me, I'm number 36 on the callback list for firefighters. Do you know where they're at? I mean, it's hard things to look at somebody and say, no, I don't. I don't know where we're at. So I have a couple thoughts on that. None of them are good.
Council President Kevin Kelley. Hey, buddy.
Hey,
how you doing?
Danny, how are you?
Good. Listen, can we touch on what maybe you and the mayor's office might be doing on a positive note? We've got the Republican convention coming, it's probably an opportunity to get some of our local businesses and nonprofits and maybe union brothers and sisters to get in a room to find some like-minded common ground. Is there any discussion been on that?
On which issue? I'm sorry.
The Republican convention when they're coming. We're going to have everybody in here. So I'm just wondering, are we hosting anything, to have some of our local businesses or maybe our nonprofit entities or just to maybe be with some of the politicians and delegates in town?
When this was initially, when we had just been awarded it, we did meet with, I was in the mayor's office and we were talking about, what the local participation is going to be. And just a sense of how good this convention is going to be for the city is they are going to hire locally. But the comment they made is that they're going to need so much. They're going to need so many of the skilled trades that they believe that they will use what we have and then still need to go out of the community to do so. If you think about the fact that they're going to build a media center for all of the national, the CNNs, the CNNBCs, every network in the world, they've got to build that close to the queue. They've got to have that ready to go. That's going to involve a lot of participation from our electricians from Local 38. The building of the stages, the public infrastructure. We were given, not specific, but an assurance that starting local would be where they started. But because there's going to be so much created, there may be some out of towners that are on the jobs. But the Republican National Convention is and will be a tremendous thing for the city of Cleveland.
Council President, can you explain why it appears as though City Council doesn't allow meetings, doesn't allow for public comment, and what we could do to change that?
Yes, the rules of Cleveland City Council, if there's an issue that you are interested in speaking on, you are permitted to, and I would encourage you to, contact the chair of the committee. Now, if you've ever been to a Cleveland City Council meeting, like our Monday meetings, there's a few times where there's a contested vote or a voice vote, but a lot of it's perfunctory. I would suggest that if anybody really wants to have an impact or really wants their thoughts considered, you want to do it before that Monday night meeting. You want to do it in committee. If your concern is so compelling, then council can consider it, and then we go into committee of the whole to consider that issue. But I really believe that any citizen, every meeting that we have is open, everything is posted, everything's streaming live, and that if you want to be a difference maker, then the committee process is the way to go. If we just had it open on Monday nights, there would just be a lot of talking, and there wouldn't be a lot of actual change. If you want change, the committee chairman and the committee process would be your best opportunity.
No better way to end this forum than a question on civic engagement. So today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been enjoying very much a forum featuring Cleveland City Council President Kevin J. Kelley. Thank you, Councilman. I'm reasonably certain that we'll invite you back in 2016. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.